Well, my story begins. I don't even know what it was like being out of church. We grew up in the church. I was raised by some God-fearing family. Father was called to preach the gospel. Mother was just a helpmeet, as we would describe in the Bible, and she just went everywhere my dad went, which was my pastor too. And we did this all my life. We had I come from a family of 4. I'm the youngest of 4, and you know, we was one of those people that I didn't know any other lifestyle but church lifestyle. We had revivals sometimes 4 or 5 weeks out of the, at a time, and they were every night. There was breaks or just a weekend revival. These were every night. I always say to people in the church today that I grew up in the church, and I can say literally I grew up in the church. I had my own bed on the pulpit. My father was pastoring in Union City, Ohio, and I had my own bed on the pulpit by the drums. And so needless to say, I truly grew up in church. Well, when I was 12 or 13, we were going to a church over here in this town, and our family was a part of it. Everybody was a part of it, and my uncle had been passed away for probably about 2 or 3 years now, and but we were still supporting the pastor that came in, and we were doing everything that we thought we were supposed to do. We was equipped to do. And as a 12 or 13-year-old, I was just tagging along anyway. And I'll never forget. We were going to the school, and there was a school they had, and some things. New leadership. Obviously with new leadership, there's different vision. There's different perspectives and different ways of doing things than the way we've been used to doing it. But around 12 or 13, there was a lot of things that took place. A lot of harsh words started coming out. I'll never forget, I come home, my mom and dad hid a lot of things from me. Didn't want me to see the hurt, didn't want me to see the things that, as we would call church business, didn't want me to see a whole lot of that. So they would hide a lot from us kids, which I'm respectful of that. But I'll never forget, I come home one day, and I was 12 or 13 years old again, and I was wondering why my mom and dad were crying. And I got to talking to them. I said, "Tell me why you're crying, Mom." And they said, "Oh, Nathan, I don't know what we're going to do, and I don't know that we're going to go to this church anymore." And I was like, "Why would we want to leave our church?" And I said, "Mom, that's not God." And I remember trying to get spiritual with her. I said, "Mom, that's not the Lord. This is where we're supposed to be." And my mother and my father, tried to explain it to me as best as they can. To a 12-year-old, me understanding, I got an 11-year-old now. Some things you got to break it down as simple as you can. But they just flat told me, "Nathan," and in their time of hurt, I didn't understand it at the time, but in their time of hurt, they just came out and was so blunt with it. And they said, "Nathan, the church people over at this church was so blunt. They came out and they're bashing our name. They're bashing who we are. They're taking all credibility of who we are, and we're not going to stand for it." And telling a 12-year-old boy that all of a sudden people don't like you, kind of had an effect on me. So from the time I hit 13, I said, if y'all feel like that, I'm going to probably feel the same way. And so I had got bitter, and I had become angry at an early age that I didn't want to even go to that church anymore. When church camp came around, I didn't want to go to it. When they would have teen functions that came around, I had no business being with it. 2 or 3 years later, I watched my mom and dad try to reconcile, and they did. They worked it out with the church family that had some harsh things to say, and they became to love this family. Or they become to love this family. But to me, it was still in me. The residue of the bitterness was still forgive, because I remember mom and dad, and I just didn't want to do it. My mom and dad would try to get me to go to church, and I just didn't want to do it. Now I'm up at 17, 18 years old, and even up to 19, and even my aunt was a big part of that church, and she just said, "Nathan, you don't have to come to my church. Just go to any church. You just need to be a part of do what God's called you to do. And she had seen things on my life maybe I didn't see. And I remember she called me when I was 19 years old, and she was trying everything to do to get me to come to church. And she said, "Nathan, there's this pretty little girl that's coming to this church now. She's your age, and I think you would think she's pretty. Won't you come to church tonight?" And I looked at my aunt and I said, "I'm not, no, I'm not coming." I was like, "I might stop in sometime next week." And so at this time, there was so much bitterness in me that even a 19-year-old single boy didn't even want to come to church for a pretty little girl. And because there was so much stuff inside me I didn't really recognize and didn't understand. Now, I'll never forget, in 1996, I turned 21, and the Lord was really dealing with my spirit, and I was, struggling with some things. So I went to church, and from that time, from 96 in December to 07, or 97 in February, the Lord was really working on this thing that I was struggling with, this bitterness and this hurt. That in 97 of February, my aunt passed away, the same one that was trying to get me to date this girl. She had passed away, and I really seen a revelation of who Jesus was. And I didn't realize all this hurt that I had inside of me, that I had let it go. And I had to say, "God, rebuild me, strengthen me in these areas that I didn't realize I was weak in." And I'll never forget that day, February, a cold winter day in February, that I surrendered my heart to the Lord, and I saw a revelation of who He was. And I just remember His blood, representing His shedding that blood for me. And from that day forward, I never turned my back away from God. And I had even accepted my calling that same year. Preached my first message in 97 of July. And I went for years. I was still single. I found my wife in 98, 99. We got married. We was doing everything we knew that we was called to do. I was called to do, at least. And from 99 to 2000, I accepted my first position in church, full-time ministry, and working in my cousin's church. And he brought me on as a youth pastor and associate pastor, and a little bit of everything, I always call myself. And so we just did whatever I had to do. And that time in my life, I was on cloud 9, It's like, this is what God called me to be. This is what God orchestrated me to be. So nothing could go wrong. And in 01, everything possibly went wrong. We had a huge, nasty church split. And some things that, I never dealt with. My mom would always hide, as I told you earlier. My mom hid those things from me. And I started seeing them come out, out of the closet, as it would say. And I watched people who were so close to my pastor. They called him up as he was in my office. They would call him up and they say, "You are what the book of Jude described as a false prophet. You are fake, and you are going to destroy this church, and we are going to bring you down." And I'm thinking to myself, I see this man day in and day out. They don't even know who this man is. I pray with him every day. I study with him. I work with him every day. He is far from a false prophet. And it hurt me so bad that, I didn't think, when I watched this pastor, this grown man, sit in my office and begin to weep and cry, to me, right then, all those feelings came back to me of hurt again. And for about 3 years, from 02 to 05, I could not even forgive those people that said these things about my pastor. That the ones that were saying that he was fake, he was false teacher, every time that I would see them driving down the road, bitterness would rise up in me, and I would look at them like, "See, you're fake. It's you that's fake." And I did this forever and ever, and I ended up leaving Salina, where I was from. I left that area, moved back to Muncie, and I said, I don't want nothing to do with church stuff. And it took me a long time from 02 to 05 to really get over this bitterness. I think back on it now. I still feel the hurt that I felt even back then, and it really almost brought me to a point of depression. Well, while I'm in this state of depression, and this is about 05, I was in the praise team. I was just doing what, I was doing what I was called to do, but I wasn't going to put full time into it. And I was just really hurt. And I'll never forget, we was in a church service back in Saline, Ohio. I moved back. And we were singing this song. It was an old Gary Oliver song. It was called Cast All Your Cares Upon the Lord. And here I'm leading. I'm leading this song. And the Lord just began to melt me right there on the stage. You're a praise leader. You're up there singing. You shouldn't be going down to the altar. I had to put the mic down. And because the Lord was drawing me, He says, don't care about anything of this world. Just give all your cares to me. And He goes, and I'll make them right. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I put my mic down there. Everybody looked at me and said, where are you going? And I said, I got to lay some things down because I wanted to be healed on the inside, because I was tired of facing this hurt and this bitterness that was inside of me. And when I went down there, I don't even know if anybody even prayed for me, even laid hands on me. But all I know is me and the Lord sitting at that altar. And I remember crying out and saying, God, take away this pain and this hurt. And I mean almost instantly, that pain and those bitterness feelings and that hurt all had left me. And I was challenged on it the next week because I met up with some of the people that had said some things, and it was really gone. And I remember going up and shaking their hands and saying, it's good to see you. And I thought, well, is this a facade? Is this a mask that I'm putting on? But it really wasn't, because there was no more animosity. There was no more bitterness. There was no more hurt, because I truly was delivered from this hurt and pain that, I didn't look at them like I once did. And, it took me now, I look back on this now, and, I get kind of emotional thinking about it, but it's been 6 years. And here I am today in 2011. God has just brought me from a mighty long way. And I'm sitting here at Destiny Christian Center now, working with Pastor Keith as an associate pastor. And again, just doing whatever he needs me to do at this point in my life. Got 2 beautiful kids, 11-year-old, a soon-to-be 8-year-old here in a few months, or a month away. And God's just blessed me with a beautiful wife that I'll be married to 13 years coming this July. And God is just doing so much in our ministry here. And, if I look back now, I look back just 6 years ago, that if I would have never asked God to set me free and cast all them cares to Him, I don't really know where I would be. I would probably be one of those never was, or those has-beens, as they would say. But by the grace of God, I'm standing here today fulfilling God's will in my life, because He kept me the whole time and He never gave up on me. And I'll always give God praise for that.